Tom. Thank you for joining us. How are you doing this afternoon?
All right, no problem.
I know you've driven a lot, owned and trained some standardbreds in the past. How did you get into the race office at Buffalo Raceway?
We were in Batavia. I had quit driving because my back was just killing me. So I was just training some horses. And Ginny Rosenfeld was named the race secretary here at Buffalo. And she paged me one day, and she just asked me, would you be interested in being the assistant race secretary? Because she knew I was just, with my back, I was funneling out of it. So I told her yes, and I've been her assistant for 3 years, and then got promoted last year.
Very, very nice. I know you trained thoroughbreds as well, which is the opposite to our standardbred meet. How did you transition back and forth between the two?
Well, I really got into thoroughbreds, of course, because of the money. The standardbreds, they didn't have slots at the time. The money in the standardbreds wasn't very good. So I decided to try my hand at thoroughbred. I brought a couple thoroughbreds. A guy named Ralph D'Alessandro that I knew out at Finger Lake said, bring him to my barn, come and take care of him. I'll watch over you, make sure you don't do anything stupid. And so that I brought a couple horses out there, and I kind of learned it from him. And next thing you know, I had a big stable, and we were doing great at Fort Erie. We moved to Fort Erie because we heard the slots were coming in up there. We wanted to get in on the ground floor, and we did great up there until, of course, the slots went away. And that pretty much ended our career at Fort Erie.
Well, definitely. Well, we're glad to have you back in the standardbred industry. Obviously, you're working here at Buffalo Raceway. What other tracks have you been to and helped you gain experience before coming here? I know you talked earlier about some of the work you did at the Red Mile.
Yeah, the Red Mile was a big break. I actually did that the first year I was here. They had called Ginny Rosenfeld to come to the Red Mile to chart and be the program director. And she couldn't do it because she was the assistant and program director over at Batavia, and those meets coincided. And I heard her on the phone, and the next thing, because my office was, the next thing I heard was, don't worry, I'll send Tom down. And next thing I know, after this meet, I was in Kentucky, and I've been doing that for the last 4 years now.
Very, very nice. Well, we got another great season at Buffalo Raceway coming up. What are some new things that the bettors might notice as they walk around Buffalo Raceway with the races?
Well, the one thing we're going to try to do this year is, if you'll note, I took the open trot, which is usually on a Friday, moved it to a Wednesday. We also have an open mares race on Wednesday. I'm going to try to make those the early double every Wednesday, and those first batch of races, 6, 7 races, I'm going to try to make those the same every week. I want the bettors to really be able to follow these horses, the same horses week in, week out. They can see if they got in trouble, if they got a good trip and just didn't have any horse. I think one of the best handicapping tools is watching the race. And this way they can follow these same horses week in, week out, and know what had happened the previous week. We also have a couple new drivers coming for the beginning of the meet, Frank Milby, and I talked to Brian Dobson yesterday. He's coming. So those two will really help add some excitement for the first couple months anyway. And hopefully we'll be able to get some bettors some money in their pockets.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny you mentioned the new drivers. Are there any new stables with horses coming that you know of, or is it going to be like the J.D. Perrins and things of that sort?
Yeah, all our usuals are coming back. The one guy that's new to Buffalo is Jimmy Clauser. Now, he shipped into Batavia. He raced in Batavia, but he is also coming to Buffalo. He's got 8 stalls here, and he's got some really nice horses. There's a guy to follow. He wins races at a high percentage. So there's a guy to follow, and he's the one that's new to come in this year.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I know you mentioned that the open trot is moving from Friday to Wednesday, but are there any changes to the purses or conditions that might be coming up to the meet here?
Well, the purse structure you're going to notice is up in the middle classes. We've, over the past couple of years at Buffalo, have lost our middle class, that 5 to 10, 5 to 12 range. We've really had a decrease in those number of horses. To me, that's the meat and potatoes of Buffalo Raceway, is that middle class, and we're going to try to get those back. So we've increased that area, especially trying to get owners where it's not as expensive to get a horse that can still make good money try to get some people to entice them to get some horses. So that's where we've added the purses on the middle classes mostly. The changes in the condition sheet there's not a lot of changes, but I am going to try to sprinkle in a few thoroughbred gimmicks here and there, with some condition races with certain conditions on them and stuff like that. Try to get a starter allowance going that would be considered a starter allowance in a thoroughbred, and try to get a couple thoroughbred conditions into the standardbred.
Okay, wonderful. And we also have our Nitrous Knockout Series coming up. That's one of our premier 4 claiming series. Tell us how things are changing with that and what horsemen can expect.
Well, our first series is the Nitrous Series A, which is the exact of last year. It's for 4,000 claimers or less who have started horses started for 4 or less from last year to this year. And it's going to be the exact same thing. Three eliminations and a final. The only difference this year is our second one is also going to be the exact same, but it comes up in April instead of later on in the meet. And after those 2 series are done, we're going to take the top 4 out of each final, and in the second Saturday in May have a $25,000 invitational for the higher money winners, or the higher, the ones that did the best in the 2 finals.
Right.
And so we're just going to take the best out of those finals and have a $25,000 invitational for them.
Wonderful. That's an awesome thing. And I know some of the bettors sometimes we see like an open 1 or open 2. How do you decide if a trainer has a couple of good horses, who goes in which of those classes? And more specifically, I know sometimes some horses get to draw inside versus outside. How do you decide how that works?
Well, I stay away from as much I can as the assigning. If a horse wins a couple opens in a row, he's going to get assigned the outside. And the only way a horse is really going to get assigned the inside is if he fits a cheaper class and I borrow him to help the open go. Then I'll give them the inside. Other than that, everything's going to be drawn. If a guy has 2 opens and one has to race in the open 2 and he's already beat the open 2s, he'll be assigned the outside. Most part, everything's going to be drawn.
Well, wonderful. Well, Tommy, we appreciate you taking time to sit down with us today. We've learned some great things about the upcoming racing season, and we hope you'll join us here at Buffalo Raceway.